Hi, welcome to Knowledge as We See It, the show where we explore what engagement means to us in the workplace. I'm your host, Steve Berg, and in this episode, we get to talk about all things big knowledge, micro content for sales teams. This week, I'm joined by Steffaney Zohrabyan, Sales Enablement, Innovation, and Insights Leader at Cisco and founder of the Digital Adopter. We're going to talk about her experience in digital adoption, a topic that's particularly close to my own heart, as someone who worked very early on in that space, and sales enablement. Steffaney, I believe you're going to be letting us know what micro content is, how we can use it to help close more deals, and some best practices for using micro content in sales collateral. So Steffaney, it's great to have you here to give us the knowledge as you see it on Knowledge as We See It. So hey, Steph.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So before we jump into our normal main big topic, I'd love to ask you a few questions just so we get to know you a little bit better. So can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, what your journey looked like? How did you get to be at Cisco as global leader of innovation for sales?
Absolutely. So I am outside of beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. It's very cold today. It's been very cold, but I absolutely love it here. And I have kind of a very eclectic background. I studied theater in college. No one ever told me to get a job one day. No one told me that everything was going to be tech once I got out of my undergrad. But as soon as I did get out of my undergrad, luckily I had a lot of experience with French. I had volunteered in France and Belgium for a year and a half. And so I was so lucky that a bunch of tech companies took pity on me and they needed French translators. So I worked as a French translator and doing software QA, quality assurance. It turned into starting to create training materials for new employees coming in. We all had those big binders full of training materials on our first day. There's I'm sure a lot of those that have my name on it over the years at different companies. But I wanted to go back to school and I decided to study instructional technology and look into the different technology aspects that go into training and upskilling employees and really closing talent shortages and talent gaps. And that led me to different roles at Robert Half International, which was a big recruiting company, T-Mobile for Business as we merged with Sprint, which was crazy. If you were here in the US back in 2020, we merged right when COVID hit. And I thought it was going to be a joke. I thought we were going to wait and be like, no, we'll merge after this pesky virus goes away in 2 weeks, like it says it will. But we decided we had that fun, experience. And that led me to different roles as well at startups. And then about a little over a year ago, I was approached by my current manager at Cisco. He is the Senior Director of Global Sales Enablement, and the VP at the time was very interested in supporting employees and supporting especially our Cisco sellers in different ways. How do we, reach employees within the flow of their work? How do we make enablement more engaging? And how do we make sure that we're tracking the sellers' progress and showing that our enablement efforts are worth it? And that was really an inspiring goal to me. So I decided to hop on the Cisco wagon, and it's been really crazy the past year.
So it's a little change from the massive binders into the world of sales enablement.
Thank heavens. Thank heavens. That's all I have to say. Nobody wants a giant binder sitting in the corner of their desk. That I feel like I have like 2 or 3 holding up my bookshelf over here.
It's about what they're good for.
Yep. I love looking at the table.
So jumping back in, we like to ask a few little questions at the beginning. What's the best career advice you've ever received?
I think it was, coming from a role, when you're new in your career, you're always scared to make mistakes. You're always scared that you don't look productive enough or that they're tracking your hours. And I feel like all new employees, all young professionals have that concern. But it was when I finally got into a role where it was fine that I made mistakes. It was fine that the first iteration of my programs was kind of garbage and we improved from there. having a leader that did that, it was in my first role at Robert Half, and I had an incredible manager. But having a manager who, looked at my work, allowed me to make mistakes, and then coached me through improvements, that was just a real inspiration for how all employees should be treated, not just ones creating training, not just ones creating videos, but any employee, whether they're about to have a conversation with a customer about a renewal or a potential sell, or somebody working in the tech center. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't be afraid if your first iteration of a program is ugly. just do it and do better next time.
Yeah, I think, I was watching a movie recently with my wife. I think it was with Pete Davidson and Allison Brie. Like, they have some new movie that just came out, and at one point, I remember there's some scene where Pete Davidson's getting all worked up because he did something wrong, and she just kind of grabs his face. She's like, it's okay for things to get messy sometimes. I think that's something that people early on in their career, you're like, no, I'm finally in my first big corporate job. I'm at this company that has, my first ever client was Lowe's Home Improvements. And I was like, this is a massive retail client. I cannot screw up. Screwing up is not an option.
You can't mess up Lowe's. Like, what will people do on Saturday mornings? Yeah.
Exactly. Right? You cannot screw up no matter what. Do you understand what's at stake here? And then my boss also came to me and he was like, so you made a mistake. Did you learn from it? Good. Move on. And it was kind of just like, oh, okay. Sometimes it's that first time you screw up, you kind of have that like, oh my God moment. And you breathe in and you're like, can I breathe? Is that okay? And then you have that really good manager who comes to you like, it's fine. And you're like, oh, okay.
Such a relief.
That wasn't so bad.
Such a relief. I still have moments where I feel like I need to go like log off, get away from the internet, and like hide under a park bench because I'm like, no one can know this happened. It was even pretty recently. I messed up some sort of data integration, and I'm already bad at data integrations. It's not my thing. I don't think I should be in charge of anything data related when it comes to setting it up on the back end. But I messed it up, and I was just telling my leader about it, and he's just like, we're going to fix it. Like, it's not like it's connected to like somebody's like lifeline. Like, we're okay, So it's just, everybody needs to remember that and have a little grace sometimes.
Yeah, especially on the managerial end, right? Let's remember we all were at some point that entry level, that young person just starting out on their career, and how would we have wanted to have been treated, back then. So can you tell us something about yourself that maybe not many people know, a special skill, a special story? What's something that people don't really know about you?
So I have a fun last name, but I'm not Armenian, unfortunately. My gorgeous husband, his family comes from Armenia, and so I'm part of this big Armenian community that surprisingly is here in Utah, which is great. But one thing that being part of that community got me really into is Eurovision. And I don't know if you've ever seen Eurovision. I don't know if it's not as big here in the US. They tried to make it happen last year and it was a huge flop. But Eurovision is absolutely incredible. I've been following it for several years, and nothing brings me greater joy than seeing these songs come out over the last couple of weeks. It's so crazy.
It is the weirdest song contest I have ever seen. And also it's like, but I don't want to stop watching.
Exactly. And it's like, why, like, okay, Moldova, that was a weird choice. Like, why would you do that? Or like, I don't know what's going on in Finland, but Finland are like the hardest rockers I've ever seen. I'm like,
All
is that what's going
metal.
on in Finland? Like, it's absolutely incredible. They come out with like this heavy metal song every year that absolutely slams.
Oh no, and it's a headbanger too, and you're like, go the Nordics.
I know. Look at you guys.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, okay? We know micro content is kind of this super hot topic, especially amongst sales and sales enablement and sales teams recently. Can you kind of give us that intro, right, for those who aren't familiar, especially on the sales enablement side, to micro content, and why micro content is so much more important for creating that winning sales organization and winning sales collateral?
Absolutely. So micro content, I feel like when I came into, the sales enablement world, even probably 5 years ago, I felt like everything was these 10-minute videos. They were highly produced. I don't know why when, things change in sales about every 7 minutes, but they, very long, or, the content was, a 5-page PDF on how to do a process, how to sell this or things like that. So micro content's really trying to get away from that. It's really trying to take bite-sized chunks and let the sellers know kind of, you're standing right here. What can you do right here? I worked at McDonald's growing up. I was one of those kids, and it was my first job. It's kind of exciting. 20 years ago this year, I entered the workforce as a McDonald's employee. And I just remember thinking, like, how am I supposed to remember how to make a hamburger? I know I watched a video on it in the back about how, Johnny was able to make a hamburger and it looked great, but how am I supposed to remember how to do this? And I remember getting out onto the floor after my 4 hours of training, sitting in the back freezing in their little employee training room and looking up at that screen, and it said a Big Mac. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to make a Big Mac now. I'm a McDonald's employee, and just being really scared. But, McDonald's, for the good or the worst, for all they're doing for us and all they're not doing for us as a society, they've really truly architected an environment where no matter where you stand in that McDonald's, you know exactly what to do. So I remember staring at the bun toaster, and it said, okay, a Big Mac bun, the buns go in this way. You grab this box, and then 2 steps to my right, I was able to see that the next step was, the sauces, then the pickles, then the onions. And literally anywhere you stand, whether you're standing at the fry machine, whether you're looking at the bags as you hand it out. Next time you get a McDonald's bag, it actually shows how things should be arranged in there. It shows how many napkins should be in there, and everything from the McFlurry stand. So I think McDonald's is a really great example of how you create these little micro pieces of training that help reach an employee where they are, and it's not just a commercial for what is a bun toaster. Why does McDonald's use this bun toaster? This is like the top of the line model. No, it's not that. This is what you do right now, and this is how you do your next thing. This is how you get to that next step. And so when you're creating micro content, a lot of times I see sellers or sales teams, not sellers, but the sales enablement teams are creating this content that's kind of a commercial. It's like, this product is going to change your life. Jessica loves this product, but at the end you still don't know, like, what am I supposed to do with this product? How do I pitch this product? And that's like 8 videos down. And so when you're creating a micro video or any type of micro learning, really think about, how can I get the seller to their next step as fast as possible? What could I possibly do? And so that's kind of micro content for me. It's not a commercial. It's not a job aid, but it's letting somebody know exactly what they need immediately.
So it's almost like it's the TLDR of long form content, right?
There you go.
Those 3 lines that you put at the beginning of every email, that 2-page email that you're sending out that your VP requested because it has all the information you could ever possibly want, but like the too long don't read is, we missed our goals, need to catch up, is essentially exactly the story of what is in the rest of this email. That's kind of like the micro content version.
I think that's a really great example. And I finally Googled that. I had no idea what that meant. And that's a little passive aggressive, like, too long, didn't read. Like, that's so funny that we just feel comfortable, like, putting that. I've seen that on director level emails. Like, here's the TLDR on that. I'm like, whoa. But yeah, it's so frustrating because a seller, really has about a 2 to 3 minute gap between their processes, between whether they're between calls or whatnot. And you can't give them a 10-minute video and expect them to get anything out of it, especially when you don't have some sort of action at the end where they're actually supposed to do something. So it's just really, it's an interesting shift in how you have to create your content.
So I guess that's more on like the sales training side, where I'm trying to give you, hey, you're at X point in the sales process, or you get the following objection from a prospect. How do you handle it? Is
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's very specific, and it's hard because it requires a lot more reliance on knowing the seller and really knowing their workflows, knowing what kind of conversations they're having with customers and what sort of objections they're getting. So traditionally in learning and development, you have a manager or a director, some sort of stakeholder that comes to you and wants you to create some sort of training, create some sort of content that could support the seller. And a lot of times as an instructional designer with a specific skill set, you don't really dig as deep into the user as you should. You don't do enough of this sort of root analysis to really understand where that user is, where that learner is, and create something that's as applicable for them as possible. You just kind of gather the requirements, gather those 3 to 4 learning objectives, and you're good to go. But sales enablement is a very specific skill. And I've noticed this as I've worked more with sales enablement individuals, is that we're really focused on that seller. And we're focused on specific industries. We have different individuals in our enablement team, and where I sit in Cisco, that are experts on certain products, experts on certain, verticals and, commercial or enterprise. And because they have that expertise, it has a whole nother layer that lets us get even more micro with our content, that says this is a piece of content for a seller sitting in the Southwest trying to sell commercial. And it makes it so much more applicable. The seller knows it's for them. It doesn't just think it's this random or this generic video that was created to, let people know things, but it's so specific that it has so much more of an impact that way.
So now we're kind of in this, world where I think you're right. They get 2 to 3 minutes in between. Let's say I have a sum total of 15 minutes in between my 2 sales meetings, right? That's the way my sales development person has booked, has booked my calendar out. I get 15 minutes in between the meetings, right? So I have 15 minutes. I have to probably spend 7 minutes putting in notes into the CRM for my last meeting, setting up my follow-up tasks. I've got maybe, like you said, 3 minutes to, hey, I screwed up on this objection, and I know I screwed up on this objection, right? And then I have 5 minutes, let's say, run to the restroom, get back before my next meeting. And that kind of, when you look at sales in that way, it almost negates the ability for us to use long form, those 10-minute videos that you were talking about. It negates our ability to use that in any way that's going to drive a positive effect.
Absolutely. And that's best case scenario. I know sellers whose entire day is just stacked. Like, when do they go to the bathroom? I worry about them because their days are fully stacked, just full of meetings. And so it really is a mindset shift. And I think that there is a need for, of course, webinars. There's a need for this longer training when you need to go more in depth into items and into products, for example. For example, like at Cisco, we have network switches. I don't know any seller in the world who comes into Cisco that just knows what a network switch is. Maybe if they did that in another life, who knows? But I think that it's important to know that you can go deep and you can create content where sellers can invest and learn more and maybe even become certified in a specific topic. But in the day-to-day, it is really important to have that seller in mind, that seller that has 2 minutes and that needs to find something quickly.
So now we've got, kind of the salesperson on the sales training side, but how do we kind of use that same micro content to grab the attention of, to use it more inside the sale itself, right? I'm inside a sale. I've asked a question. How do we make sure that the salesperson kind of has that micro content to make that message impossible to ignore, whatever point it is that they're trying to get across mid-sale?
So there's lots of different technologies coming out, especially with the sales engagement platforms that are, and the conversational intelligence platforms that are starting to push content in front of the screen when they get triggered. I don't think that we're there yet where I would feel comfortable popping stuff up and making a seller look at something really quick when they're on a phone live with a customer. I don't know that the technology is that advanced where we can do that yet. I think we're almost there. But I think that from what I hear about sellers is that they even say things like, I'm just in such a hurry. I just want to get something really quick. So I just type something into Google and sometimes the Cisco page comes up and I can find customer-facing content from the Cisco page. And that really kind of negates the need for all of our incredible content that's, within our sales enablement platform. So there's a gap there in what we provide for the seller and the fact that they can't find it fast enough when they're on the phone. So how can we create even sort of this small portal? Everything you need to have conversations with customers about this, everything you need, but it's tiny enough, it's small enough, and it's not just a video, of course, because you can't watch a video when you're on the call. But could you have a battle card ready when they bring up a certain competitor? Could you have a quick sheet that references a certain feature that we have coming up? What other ways, even outside of video, could you have that sellers could pull up very quickly? And it's just a matter of thinking how a seller thinks and how fast they need to find things.
So again, let's I actually want to explore that for a second, because that's something that, I think every company and every organization worldwide deals with is, we you have kind of this senior manager theory of, I want everything available to them, and you guys have a ton of sales enablement stuff that can go out there. And yet you also have, like you just said, we have our salesperson who's in the middle of a call. They have about 14 seconds maybe to find the right piece of content. How do we almost apply that filter and shrink our libraries down to make sure we're serving up only the things that are relevant and are actually going to drive impact, instead of our salespeople having to go find a web page and kind of close that gap?
And be like and even providing something that the customer could have found themselves if they had Googled. We want to, make sure that if they're investing in time with our sales teams, that they're getting the best information. So I think it's one thing that I've seen with a lot of sales enablement platforms and content management platforms is, making sure that things are tagged. As much as we harp on our sellers for not updating the CRM, for their data not being clean, we as, talent development individuals, we kind of do the same thing, where we're just so excited to finally get an asset ready, get a piece of content ready to go, that we don't invest in the time to make sure that it's tagged properly, to make sure that it's actually in the right space, or even to make sure that it's QA'd so it works when somebody clicks on it. So having that amount of accountability to be able to say, as a talent development professional, we have created an environment for the seller to find everything, not so much that it's not hard, remove that friction and make it easy.
Yeah, I think we kind of also deal with this on the product side, right? In technology companies, product is, we've completed a sprint. We now have these features that are ready to launch. And then you have that product marketing team that comes in and goes, hold, we're not ready to launch. Mm-hmm. I know you guys are really excited. I know you want to push it into live environments. You want to make it available for all of our users to use on whatever technology platform they're using. But it's kind of hold, breathe, think, is this the right thing for us to be pushing right now? Or do we want to push it right now because we're proud of it and we've completed it? And that's a really hard question to ask, especially for someone who puts in the hours that talent development professionals put into creating their content. Right? It's hard to have that level of patience to say, it's relevant, it's great, will our sales team use this?
And I always tend to say, what is the data telling us? Have sellers been able to find this in the past? Who's engaged with, similar content within our sales platform before? Who's able to find it? When are they sharing it? What times of days, or are they just viewing it? How long are they viewing it? And I think that I just think, people say things all the time like, oh yeah, I view sales content all the time. I'm on the phone with sellers where they say things like that. And that's kind of what I say, yeah, I exercise all the time. Or like when you're sitting in the dentist chair and you're like, I floss all the time. Like, what do you mean all the time? Like, are you every day? Yeah. Or it's like, my hobby is flossing. You tend to overestimate how much time you're spending with learning, and how much time, just because you don't want to hurt the people's feelings of the people making the content. I feel that same way. Like, oh, didn't you like that last training? Yeah, Brenda. It was great. Like, no one's going to be on, very few people are going to be on there and be like, oh my gosh, I hate that. Stop making things like that. But the data really tells a strong story. And there's this quote that I absolutely love. And it says, if we want to go by facts, let's use data. And if we want to go by opinions, let's just use mine. Because I think that I can go around and I can say sellers love this type of content. Everybody in the industry is saying that this type of content is really resonating with sellers. TikTok is even saying that it's such a big deal. But if the data is telling me that they're not viewing it and they're not taking action based on what they viewed, then we need to revisit that and say, maybe TikTok was wrong. Heaven forbid, maybe that 20-second TikTok wasn't as great as we thought. So really, as a sales enablement, as a talent development professional, look at your data and try not to just take polls at the end and say, did you like this? Yes or no. Again, people aren't going to, not everyone's going to say how much they hated your training or how big of a waste of time they thought it was at the end of it. they're not going to be as honest, but are they actually doing what you have put forth in the training? Are you able to look into your platform and see that changes have been made in behavior or in process? And I think that's something that's really important that people just aren't taking enough of account into.
And so now you're touching on my favorite topic, which is digital adoption.
Okay, awesome.
You've gone there, you spoke about it, so we're going to get to it.
Not everyone likes that. People are like, what's that? So I never know how deep to go into that, but let's dive.
Digital adoption, right? Super hot new topic, specifically around sales. Salesforce, our favorite tool that we love to hate. I think that's kind of been the mantra of every salesperson who uses Salesforce, or let's be honest, any CRM. It's their favorite tool because it's also where their commissions get paid out of, and it's where we use to track their commissions, but it's also their least favorite tool. Because why should I have to update it? My job is to sell, not to update a CRM. I think that's my most favorite objection, right? So now we're building almost, it's almost from what I've seen on digital adoption. And funnily enough, we actually have some of these digital adoption platforms as clients of ours at Powtoon, where they're actually creating micro content on how to use their digital adoption platform. So it's this whole round piece. But how do you combine, right? We talked about actionable behaviors and behaviors that we need to see changed, and actually looking at the changed behavior as a barometer of success. How do you kind of go about combining the digital adoption platform, which is going to take you on that journey, walk you through exactly what you need to do, plus the micro content to kind of achieve maximum results within our sales team?
So this is my favorite topic ever. And this is what I was actually brought to Cisco to do, is to think, how do we take our content and put it within the flow of work for sellers to where they know what to do next. They know that next step. If you look at the CRM, any page, the opportunity page, the account page, the contacts pages, there's about 15 to 25 different things on that page they can look at. It is so overwhelming, any page in the CRM, really almost any web page anybody is on, to let them know what is the best thing they could do at this point. And so one thing that we've done that I really love is we're starting to look at the different opportunity stages. And we're starting to say, okay, you're at a 1. How can we use a digital adoption platform to insert content at a stage 1 where all they have to do is click on a button. It's right there for them as they're looking at their forecast and as they're planning out. Here's everything you need to do to get to a stage 2. Here's everything. You could watch this quick video about, so you understand your buyers. You understand negotiation. Here's a little tidbit about this. Again, my rule is keep it under 30 seconds, which is incredibly micro. We'd even call that nano, or no, I don't know what's smaller, but I say give it to them in 30 seconds.
When we were in USB world, it was micro USB and then nano USB. So I feel like nano is the only right term we can use.
There we go. There we go. So I'm thinking like the iPod Nano. I was like the poor kid who had like the one without the screen back in college. It's okay though. I was fiscally responsible. But when we look at that type of nano content, what can they consume right now? And again, they're looking at this page right before they hop into either a call with a solutions engineer, a call with the customer. So what can they consume right now at this moment to be the best option? And there's so many things competing for their attention at that time. It's so overwhelming. I know that different sales and enablement platforms are even integrating their content where you can take full-scale trainings. So there's even more on the page. Am I allowed to? Sorry, no, I can say this. I don't know that somebody... Yeah, I don't know that somebody's going to be in the headspace to take a full-scale training when they're in the zone of work and they're in the flow of work and they're trying to figure out how to take an opportunity from a 1 to a 3. I don't know that's the point to really target full, big 30-minute training modules. I think that it needs to be very quick and it needs to be very applicable. Even just at Cisco, we have so many different resources available. We have this competitive win center where you can go, and it's almost like, I think in the old days they called it war rooms, where you can just get one-on-one help to help either sell against a specific competitor or really work with a difficult stakeholder that's holding up an account. You can go and you can kind of phone a friend, and you can get more solutions engineers involved. And then even just the concept of something we all want to do in sales is maximizing deals. and making sure that kind of those if-then statements that digital adoption platforms work really well with. So if they're already selling this product, and if this opportunity already has this product and this services, then you need to also maybe bundle this software. So you need to maximize the value of deals by making sure that the customer is set up with everything they need with, of course, the products, the software, and the services to make sure that they're successful and that they renew in a year or two. So there's so much you can do, but really working with the sales frontline, working with first line managers, and seeing what they're hearing from sellers needing at those different stages is a great way to determine what to put within the flow of work.
So actually, let's cover it. So you actually, you talk about people putting full-blown sales training into kind of a war room. Outside of sales kickoff, I mean, let's be realistic. This is sales, right? Like you said, 90% of the time they're booked back to back to back to back to back. Outside of sales kickoff, which is maybe the 1 week, or let's be honest, 3 days that we put aside for 3 trainings, when do you have time for a half-hour sales training?
It's going to be, 10 o'clock at night on like a Sunday night after my manager told me that I still haven't taken it and it's due. That's what I'm guessing they're going to find time to take this sales training. And that's not to discount the amount of work and the value that is in those trainings. But I think that there's a natural life cycle within different sellers where they get to a point where they're not able to sell a specific product, or they do need to maximize deals and bring in different things. And that's when they go to those larger modules and those larger trainings, or they attend those brown bag lunches. Sellers really aren't going to, I don't know many sellers that are super proactive that are saying, oh, I've got a half an hour, I'll go and take a 30-minute training on negotiation. It's that need that the seller has where they thought, I think I blew that training. I think I blew that conversation. I think I need to go back and learn a little bit more about negotiation. My manager just mentioned that this module came up. I'd love to take that. So I think we need to understand, we don't want to interrupt a seller's workflow. We don't want to, if you think about, I'm not a football fan, but like tennis, interference impedes performance. So we don't want to put things up that are going to impede their performance and are going to take them out of that flow of work and out of their zone. But we want to put something in there that's just going to give them that extra boost and it's going to get them to that next step.
Do you find salespeople actually have that sense of awareness that hey, I just blew that conversation, I should go take a training instead of doing, what I find the classic, seller response is, I just blew that conversation. That really sucked. Next.
I think it's after those conversations with their managers. And I think it's in those coaching sessions. I don't think that many companies have that a formal coaching program, but everybody has a manager that they report into. And managers are the ones where sales enablement tries to be besties with the first line managers, because we know that they're the preferred sender of any of those messages. Any upskilling that the seller has to do, the preferred sender to have that message to them is that first line manager. So if we have the manager's buy-in, and maybe the manager even helped build the training, they're much more apt to say, hey, Roy, let's talk about negotiation. Let's talk about how you can do things a little bit differently next time on our next call. Here's this training I helped build. One thing I keep hearing is if they help build it, they normally don't tear it down. So bringing in those first line managers is so crucial to having that buy-in and getting that message to the sales teams that they actually need to start learning more and going deeper into topics.
So on a knowledge retention perspective, right? So obviously I know we need to have the manager buy-in. That's actually one of the hardest things to get, I think, in talent development in general, is to get that manager buy-in to say, hey, this is worth your team's time, and you should put that out. But let's say you get that, right? Like you said, they're helping to build it, therefore they're going to get much more buy-in in terms of serving it up. But when I'm giving someone, that 30-minute session at 10 o'clock at night that they're watching at 10 p.m. because their manager says, hey, you haven't done that training that was assigned to you, so you're doing it at 10 o'clock. What's the knowledge retention going to look like on something like that? Because it can't be that high.
The hard thing about sales enablement, and one thing that I think fundamentally has to change, is how we evaluate that they've learned something or mastered it, if they dare call it that. And of course, every learning module starts with 3 to 4 learning objectives. By the end of this module, you will be able to X, Y, Z. And the only way that individuals right now, especially enablement professionals, are actually gauging that is if they answer 3 to 4 questions at the end. And I I don't know. I don't think I'm smarter than the average bear, but I can memorize pretty easily. I can take tests. I can retake tests until I get it right, until it stops bothering me and tells me I failed the test. So to say that sellers are able to perform based on answering 3 to 4 questions, I think is just the silliest thing I've ever heard. Like, okay, sure. Like I took a test on what I should eat to be healthy throughout the day. I can totally make the right choices and eat healthy throughout the day, right? Like I'm certified. I finished the training. So we need to think about it in that way. And a digital adoption platform is so great because it provides that level of reinforcement within the flow of work. So when a seller is creating their quote and they are missing out on opportunities to, sell what we do at Cisco, security, whatnot, additional services, we can be that source of reminder to say, hey, this pairs great with this. The red wine goes great with the steak. You need to make sure that you're adding this in as well and having conversations with the customer. So it just adds in that full level. And where I say that, I'm not saying that nobody can gain long retented. Nobody can have long knowledge retention from a 30-minute module. I am saying that reinforcement is a huge part of any behavioral strategy, any change management strategy, and really it contributes much greater to the success and being able to measure that sellers are making those choices.
But if we take a step back, right, because we kind of go through these same modules when it comes to like these that are, you work at Cisco, right? Cybersecurity is a small portion of what Cisco does. When we're doing that phishing training, that cybersecurity awareness training, the stuff that's been shown, all over the place. Hey, you do a proper cybersecurity awareness training, your chances of a costly data breach drop by 80 to 90%. And then we sit and make people sit down. It's the beginning of every year. You get that notification from IT. You've been assigned a course in insert LMS here. And then they sit through, and you want to obviously, as an employee, you're like, okay, I need to get this over with. Okay, it's 40 minutes broken into 9 modules. I can do this. And then you sit and you blitz through. It's almost like a binge watch, like as if you were watching Netflix, but for the learners, significantly less enjoyable because they really don't want to be watching it, especially for cybersecurity awareness training. You're not getting that reinforcement that you're giving on a sales enablement side. Right? You don't have that digital adoption platform that's serving up, hey, you filled out the quote in pieces in sales that include X and Y. They also normally include a firewall, right? You get that level of reinforcement. But in kind of our traditional learner processes, we don't get to give that reinforcement. We almost need to have that knowledge retention happen at day one. And you're right. Anyone can remember something. What is the forgetting curve? You remember it for up to like 60 minutes after learning it, and then after 60 minutes, you've forgotten 90% of what you've learned?
It's a steep decline. It's a very steep decline, right, on that forgetting curve.
So we're taking people through a cybersecurity awareness course, right? Arguably, from a corporate perspective, if we're talking about mitigating risk, one of the most important things that we could possibly do. When it comes to revenue, right, we've got that digital adoption platform. We're supporting it. We're reinforcing. When it comes to mitigating risk, you get a 40-minute course taken once at the beginning of the year that ticks off the box for ISO security standards so that our salespeople can do their selling thing. So that they tick off the box from when our client comes and says, are you ISO 20071 compliant? Yeah. 80% of our company took a cybersecurity awareness course. Check. How do we kind of get that same level if you don't have the digital adoption platform? You don't have that point of reinforcement.
So with the forgetting curve, the reason why the forgetting curve is so steep and literally looks like a very scary ski slope is the fact that it's a matter of how hard the content is to remember and the time between actually applying it. And so when you look at things like cybersecurity or compliance or even those things you do every single year, one of the big ones is, non-corruption. One thing that I saw that a company did that was actually incredibly sneaky was they sent out some phishing emails to random people. and we didn't know it was going to be phishing. And funny enough, I was like, it wasn't very long after the training. I would say that it was probably maybe 1 or 2 days afterwards. So the time between learning and execution is different. And that, me seeing something there and being like, oh my gosh, they spelled the name wrong. I don't know a mark that works here. Why are they asking me to buy Amazon gift cards? I think this is a phishing thing. And, making sure that I'm like, oh, I remember all I have to do is click the phishing hook within my, Google account, and it's going to go. And oh my goodness, I just saved lives today. And being like, not really, but it's like, oh, I didn't buy 50 Amazon gift cards and send them to some guy named Mark who doesn't work here. But the fact that, and then I got an email from IT afterwards saying, congratulations, you were able to do it. So even things like spaced out training, things like, maybe it doesn't have to be a 45-minute training where you have to play Jeopardy at the end. Like, stop making me play Jeopardy. It doesn't help me learn. Like, it's cute. Like, I appreciate the craft of building out that training. I've built out Jeopardy courses before, but that's not going to help me. But what if I get an email from somebody, even my manager, asking if I think that something is corrupt or not, after the corruption training. And that's a little thing from my manager. Sure, those things are harder to do. There's more of an investment to have that spaced out training. But in the end, I would be much more happy going to a C-level executive saying, hey, after the training, 2 days later, 90% of our sellers or 90% of our employees were able to catch the phishing thing. And you know what? I bet in 2 weeks we can have a high percentage as well because that's spaced out. So that's what I would recommend in things like that. Really think outside the box. Think outside the traditional training and space it out. It doesn't have to be 30-minute modules every single week. It could be a quick video from their preferred sender, from, Oprah. I don't know. It could be something that they can remember to say, hey, here's how to be safe and be cyber secure.
It could be one of Oprah's favorite things.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Oprah's favorite things list.
Oprah's favorite things. Cybersecurity awareness. It's handling your sales objections. It's a good one. So jumping back to micro content for a second. So one of the things that we theorize here is that micro content is much more useful for when you want someone to take an action, right? Serve them something simple. We get, maybe like you said, there's nano content where we get, 30 seconds maximum, right? And then we have that micro content, maybe a minute and a half long video. In a minute and a half long video, we get the time to maybe say one thing, if we want to say it well. Do you find that there's enough time, that minute and a half, that we can get someone, we can say one thing well enough to actually encourage whatever action we're looking for, whether it's on the customer side of, hey, I want to give you enough value that you'll book in the next meeting. In our next meeting, in our sales process, we are going to be doing a firewall analysis. We're going to be diving into the different types of network switches. Or even on a sales side, hey, quick objection handle, right? Here's the action you take if they bring up, let's say we're talking about virtual desktops, if they bring up the Qualcomm solution, right? Do you find that those minute and a half long videos actually inspire that action?
What the data tells me is that they do, if you know the person watching the videos well enough. So if you send the video and it's just, we see this all the time with sales and sending, like, my message was amazing, it was so customized. That's the wrong customer for us. That customer does not need our solutions right now. That customer, for whatever myriad of reasons, you didn't know the customer well enough, even though you looked at their LinkedIn profile and said that you thought their video was hilarious, which I appreciate when all of those SDRs message me and say that they think I'm funny. But it's the exact same thing with the sales teams. If I have a video that's meant for a solutions engineer with a very specific expertise in something that's preparing them for something, a portfolio seller who's supposed to be kind of a generalist, that is going to mean absolutely nothing to them, and it's going to make them mad that they're so confused. So my caveat to everything was, if you're going to make something a minute and a half, you have to know who that's for so well, and it has to speak to their goals. You have to show them how taking any sort of action or any sort of preparation on their part will help them reach their goal, will help them, and it just brings them an ultimate amount of value. That's what's so crucial.
So it's almost like best practices for the creating that micro content is know your audience, know what they're trying to achieve, only try to hit on those points.
Absolutely. And again, it's more work. It's more work than creating a general video that's 10 minutes that covers everything that sits in an LMS. I apologize that it's going to take you more time, but again, it's much more impactful when you do take that next step as a talent development professional and create something that is so specific to different sellers or different learners.
Does it also take, again, for that minute and a half video, you're going to need a subject matter expert because you have to distill it down.
Absolutely. No matter how much I learn about sales, there's still always something where I feel like I need to work at Cisco for another 12 years to get everything. And then everything will have changed and I'll still have to learn everything for the next 12 years. But one thing that you're going to be doing when you're creating something that's so specific, working with an expert in the field and working for a very specific user, is really helping close that behavior challenge, that hump to get people to take action. You're providing them the ability, so they know watching the video that they are able and they have the tools that they need to take that next step and to take that action. And you're also going to be demonstrating the value. So by taking this action, you're going to get this effect. One thing that I found, the data tells me makes things like this much more successful is when we have an element of social proof implemented in. So not just saying that a seller like you could sell twice as more if you just did this little thing, but to say that James in Seattle was able to close his deal 2 weeks faster than expected by going to the competitive win center. Anybody else sitting there is going to be thinking, I want to close my deal 2 weeks faster. I'm stuck at this point. How about I do that and be like James? And we're finding that when you add that element of social proof, when you give them a reason and you just say, you will get this if you do this, and giving them that promise that brings them value, the numbers go up so much higher than just a little pop-up that says, hi, you look great today. Would you be interested in, taking a training on this? Or, hey, how about you you should learn more about this before your next call. Cool. I don't get why, but maybe not.
You're not going to get buy-in. You're not going to get buy-in for that. We all know, I feel at this point, we all know some salesperson in our life. And if you would say that, hey, you could learn, they're not gonna buy in. Whereas
like me, I made it to President's Club last year. I don't need any, one of those things. We all know that person. Bless their hearts.
But, and again, good people very focused on what their job actually is in selling. And, I feel like I did my time in sales enablement and you have, this kind of, my favorite one is the salesperson who goes, I don't need to do mock calls. I don't need to do training. Just get out of my way and let me sell.
Okay, John. No, I know. Okay, Krista. No, there are those people and we want to do that. But for everybody else, I feel like there are those people who could sell, the ketchup popsicle to the woman in white gloves. We do have those rock stars who are just able to just execute. But I feel like for everybody else, let's have something that we can have. And sometimes, those rock stars have a great year and then they don't. And then they realize that they really do need a little bit of a push, a little bit of enablement. And so it's really just being there for the people when they need it within the flow of work.
Awesome. Steffaney, first of all, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I'm a geek when it comes to talking about enablement and digital adoption, so tick on both of those. But seriously, thank you so much for sharing your experience about sales enablement, digital adoption, the insights, how you're using data to leverage, to leverage better performing enablement programs. It's certainly helped us, all understand how we can improve engagement, how we can improve enablement, how we can actually impact change. So really, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Great to chat. I appreciate it.